Hello again, it's me. I'm making another video blog about being transgender, and this time I want to focus in on Sandra and I's experiences of a hospital called Green Oaks of Dallas. Again, that's Green Oaks Hospital in Dallas, Texas, and their address is 7808 Clotis Field Drive, Dallas, Texas 75251. Again, that's sorry. Again, that's 7808 Clotis Field Drive, Dallas, Texas 75251. Green Oaks Hospital. Several years ago, Sandra had a fit, and she started to hurt herself. So I decided to call the police, and they came and they took her away, and they took her to Green Oaks, and she spent a few days in Green Oaks, and they basically observed her. And I don't know what stipulations there are for keeping someone in observation, but I have a feeling she was only kept there minimally to meet legal necessities and liabilities. So she wound up spending 2 or 3 days there, and she was discharged. And she was discharged into my care because she had no one else to turn to. So she came back, and things got better for a while. And when Sandra was discharged from Green Oaks Hospital with either two or three medications, and there was no follow-up given by Green Oaks at all. And she was referred to a clinic under the North Star system of Collin County, and there she was allowed. She had assistance with her medications, and she was with her doctor. She was given 5 medications right out of the chute, and they were for anxiety, depression, attention deficit disorder, and some other couple of other things. But they put her on 5 different medications all at once, which to me I feel is really, really dangerous and not very ethical, because you never know what these reactions are going to be. So she had this service available, and she went once a month, and there was really not a lot of communication on both parts from them or her. It was kind of like, take your pills and we'll see you in a month. And she and I moved out of county, and she lost her benefit to those medications. So whether those medications could have prevented her suicide, we'll never know. And that was several years ago. I got to experience Green Oaks for myself when, shortly after Sandra committed suicide. I was shattered. I was just a broken, shattered human being, and I couldn't stay in the apartment where I'd found her. So I wound up staying with my dad, and I just pretty much was down and out for an entire week, just barely drinking anything, a few bites to eat at dinner, go right back and just lay there and just, in extreme emotional pain and despair. A week passed, and then I started to perk up a little bit. I got some phone calls from concerned co-workers and friends, and I made a showing out at my job and caught up on my time card, and made arrangements to see about getting some time off and such. And I came back to the small town where I was staying with my dad, and we had gone down to the apartment together and did sort of like a Chernobyl disaster run in and run out situation. In Chernobyl they ran in and these people ran in and shoveled a few shovels of the radioactive substance and ran out. And basically that's what I did with getting my clothes and computer and some personal items. I just couldn't be in there for more than 3 minutes. So one night, as part of my grieving process, I wrote a last will and testament on my computer, and I left it open. And the next day I went down to my apartment, which I hadn't been to my apartment since her suicide, and I basically laid with my bedding in the spot where I found her on the floor, trying to, grieve somehow. And I didn't come home that night, and my phone, I took the battery out of my phone because I didn't want to be bothered. And given my mental state, my father freaked out and called the local police. And the police came down and knocked on my door, and they woke me up. And I think it was the police. I didn't open the door. So, having been awakened, I called my father on the phone and told him where I was. And then the second time around, the police came in and they knocked on the door, and it was the police. And there was 3 of them there, and they asked me, we had concern for your mental health and your well-being, and your dad called and said you left a note, and a suicide note, which I didn't leave a suicide note. I left a last will and testament. But they asked me, have you had any suicidal thoughts? And I said, yes, I've had suicidal thoughts, given the situation. And they asked me, do you have a plan? That's it. And I responded to the effect that, yeah, I have. I've researched it. I know how to end a life. And they asked me, are you going to act upon it? I said, that's for me to know. And these are things you don't tell a cop if you're in a bad mental state, because they haul you off. And that's what happened to me. I got taken away in handcuffs, and I was taken to Green Oaks Hospital in Dallas. And thus began my nightmare experience of Green Oaks. And please bear with me, because I'll be looking at my notes and going along with what happened. So I was taken there on a Saturday afternoon, and it's like there's an in-process that you go through. You give them your name and all that kind of good stuff, and you go into this room and they strip you naked and they check you out and make sure you're not hiding anything, and it's kind of dehumanizing. And then you get put in this big open birthing area, or big open ward where there's just these beds, and you pretty much just lay there the entire day watching television. And they bring snacks every 3 or 4 hours, and that's what you eat. And in this ward, the doors are locked, you can't go out. And in this ward, the doors are locked and you can't go out. And it's co-ed, so there's both men and women. And on the right side of it and in the front are like these isolation rooms with heavy metal doors, unbreakable plastic windows, cased ceilings and cased walls. And then the open area is just basically a bunch of like what I call beach beds, or pool lounge chairs that you sit in, and they have they're not very comfortable, but and then on the other side you've got like where the dispensary is for the medication, and where the nurses sit, and you basically just kind of sit there and stare at the wall. There's no therapy, no nothing. You just sit there, watch television. That's it. Or doodle with the short little stubby pencil they give you in paper. So I spent that night in the acute ER, and I couldn't sleep. And it's hard to sleep in a place like that. And part of the problem was I was in one of those beach chairs, and they're not comfortable, and they were basically the metal backing of it was digging into my lower back. And I asked the orderly, the nurse, if I could move to one of these flatbeds they had up at the front. And I had noticed that there's an assignment board for the beds. And I said, there's no one assigned to the board, there's no one assigned to that bed on the board. Can I please sleep in there? no, you can't have those. They're assigned to people. And I said, again, there's no one assigned to it. And she just kind of ignored me. And I came back later after about an hour, and I said, I couldn't sleep. Can you please put me up on one of those flatbeds up at the front? Well, those are only for men. And I looked at the board, and there was like a female name up there, and there was a woman who was laying on the bed. I said, there's a woman up there laying on the bed. Can I please sleep on there? I need to get some rest. And I had to be persistent, and they finally relented, and I finally laid out, and it was more comfortable, slightly more comfortable than that beach chair. So, I tossed and turned that entire night and got no sleep. The next day, I pretty much stared at the walls, laid on the bed, tried to get cat nap when I could. But these places are loud. At night, the orderlies are inconsiderate. They slam stuff. The doors are slamming. Lights on and off. It's not conducive to sleep. And so I was pretty tired and pretty grumpy. And I didn't... the day before, they had asked me for my name and social security number, and when I first got in there, and I didn't want to be there, and I said, I'm not going to give it to you. You guys already have it, but when I came in. So, they asked me for it again a second time. I said, I'm not going to give it to you. You guys already have it. A third time, I finally gave it to them. And the other portion I discussed was that I had come in a kind of like a little cami with the spaghetti straps, and evidently they don't like it if your shoulders are exposed. But there was other people in there whose shoulders were exposed as much as mine were, and they didn't. Basically, this one orderly said, I don't want exposed shoulders in my ward. And they wanted me to wear this smock, and I said, I'm not going to wear this smock. And I put a blanket over my shoulders. And they kind of left me alone. So I didn't have an attitude problem. I wasn't physical or anything like that. And those are the only times, I was irritated and tired. I didn't want to be there. On Sunday, I had been compliant, no issues with me, just kind of waiting to be discharged. And I was told in the afternoon, after being there 24 hours, I was going to be discharged. And my discharge doctor was Dr. Lynx, Lynx, Dr. Lynx of Green Oaks. And he had basically signed my discharge. We had talked about a discharge plan of me going to see a counselor I had lined up before the incident, a suicide survivors group. We had discussed medications. They had my prescriptions and all that set in order. I had been given back my shoes and my personal belongings, my key, my apartment key, my driver's license. And I said, I need to call my father so I can be discharged to him. And he was like, okay. So my dad's cell phone doesn't work very well because he lives out in rural Texas. And I called him and he couldn't hear me. So I had when you're in one of these places, you're using their phone. So you have to tell them you're dialing out and all that, whole 9 yards. So he had to leave his house and he had to go up on a big hill to get proper reception. So he said he would come and get me and be discharged. To be discharged, he would come and get me when I was discharged into his care. And for some reason, my dad's wife called the hospital and she has no idea what's going on. And she basically said, well, I know that they're having communication issues, so I want to give you my phone number. And all I know is that she was having suicidal thoughts and they took her down to that mental health center. And that's what she called the nurses. And for somehow things got mixed up in communication and the doctor misunderstood and they thought I was having suicidal thoughts again, which is not what was said at all. So this miscommunication got circulated around, and then when my dad came down to come get me, the doctor went and interviewed my father for some reason. And at the time I didn't know this, but my father really kind of stabbed me in the back because he said to the doctor, I know my daughter very well, and she's really smart and can manipulate you to tell you what you want to hear so she can get herself out. And I didn't know this until later. That kind of aggravated me, but my dad can be a little mouthy sometimes. But the doctor came back and said, I'm not going to discharge you to your father because he doesn't want to have anything. He doesn't want you back. And that's, why did my father drive an hour and a half to come get me and say he doesn't want me there? And the conversation was that my dad didn't know what to do with me. It's not that he didn't want me there. I knew me being there was stress on their family, but so the doctor said, I'm going to go talk to my staff. And at the time I asked the doctor, well, can I be discharged to someone else, a friend or a coworker? And he said, yeah, we can do that. So I said, well, my dad needs to go get my cell phone so I can contact them. And he said, okay, we'll do that. And then that's when the doctor said, he got a wild hair up his ass and said, I'm going to go talk to my staff. So he comes back and he says, because of your attitude, I'm going to keep you in. I'm getting a court order to keep you in. And this is when my dad was on the way up to my apartment to get my cell phone. And he was like, really, what? And I'm like, yeah, this is what the doctor just told me. And I was frustrated, I didn't get belligerent or I didn't say anything at all. I was just internally frustrated that they were playing this game with me. Here I'm about to be discharged. My dad's getting a cell phone, and I asked the doctor, why are you doing this? And I don't feel your father is a reasonable person to discharge you to. And then he went and talked to the staff again, and he came back and he said, I'm keeping you in with a court order. You're staying here. And that just shattered me. So I was so frustrated. I was like, what kind of game are you playing with me? So I told the doctor, look, I need to dilate my vagina. And when you're transgender, you have to dilate your vagina for me at least, it's every 3 days. And if you don't do it, you lose depth of your vagina and you can't get it back. Or it's extremely difficult and painful to get it back. So I told the doctor, well, my dad's getting my cell phone. He needs to get my dilator and my lubricant. And I need to dilate tonight. And the doctor was like, okay, I understand, and we'll tell the nurses. So the evening came. My dad wanted to talk to the doctor, and the doctor, my dad called into the ward or the acute ER, and I said, the doctor wants to talk, my dad wants to talk to you. I told Dr. Links this. I don't want to talk to your father. And he just went right back to his charts. And so, anyways, I was given my dilator. The staff was given my dilator because, they take away pretty much everything from you when you go into one of these places. So it was about 10:30 at night, and I said, look, I need to dilate my vagina to the nurse on duty. And I could tell her demeanor was she was really uncomfortable with the discussion I was having. And I said, I need to dilate. And she's like, I've been here a year and a half. I've been doing this a year and a half, and I've come across a lot of people like you, and you don't have to dilate as often as you say you do. And I said, yeah, I have to dilate at least every 3 days or I lose depth. And she had this a belligerent attitude towards my medical necessity. And I said, research it, look it up. This is something I need done. Well, I'm going to look it up on the internet. I don't know what this person's credentials were, but her attitude pretty much just stunk, and you can't make a medical diagnosis by looking at the internet. So about 10 minutes later, she called me over and said, I looked on the internet and you only have to do it once a week or once in a week and a half. So you don't need to do it as much as you need to. And at that time, I was getting a little bit agitated. And I said, look, call my fucking doctor and call Dr. Bowers and say, look, this is the case, and call my doctor. And I had to be adamant with this person. Call my doctor, So supposedly I think she called the doctor, and about another 10 or 20 minutes passed, and I talked to your doctor, and she said you only have to do it once a week or as necessary. Thank you. So I was given my dilator, and I told them, I need an isolation room because I can't dilate out in the public, in this co-ed ward. So I wound up getting a room of my own and closing the door, and partially closing the door, and dilating my vagina. And after I was done, they were going to put me back out into the birthing. And I said, look, I need to get a good night's sleep. I'm irritated. I need to get a good night's sleep. Can you please let me have the room I dilated in? No, we can't do that. But there was other rooms that were open, and they were just, I don't know what their issue was. And I was back out there. I couldn't sleep. Hours passed. I said, please let me have that room I dilated in. So they finally relented, and I got 2 or 3 hours of sleep. That was my Sunday. The Monday I was, excuse me while I look at my notes. Monday I was taken out of the acute ER, and I was put into the what I call an intermediate ward, where they you're still watched. You're still watched closely, and you can't go out to the cafeteria to eat. All your food's brought to you. But at least there I had a room to sleep in. I had a roommate, which is not a big deal. I was just happy to get some restful sleep, or the prospects of having restful sleep. And in this ward, you don't really do anything but play chess, play dominoes, watch television, read books, and chit-chat. And the big highlight of every hour is you get to go out and smoke a cigarette, or if you don't smoke like me, you just go outside and get some few minutes of fresh air and sunlight. And I had, every day I had been there, I had asked in the acute ward and when I was in the intermediate ward if there was somebody who dealt with transgender issues and suicide survivorship, and they say, well, we can see what we can do about it. And they never followed up. And then eventually the answer turned into, we only do group therapy here. And it's generic group therapy. And I'm like I said, I'm not getting any benefit here. My concerns and voice did not matter at all. So, that was prescribed Wellbutrin for depression. I was prescribed some other anti-anxiety medication, but I didn't take it because I didn't feel anxious at all. So I just took the Wellbutrin. I took something else. I can't remember what it was, but I took it just to be compliant. I just wanted to get out. So I passed that day playing games, playing chess, stomped everybody at chess, and when I got bored of chess, I just kind of doodled and went to the generic group therapy, and that was it. I had a good night's sleep that night, and then the second day in the ward was basically a repeat of Monday. On that Tuesday I went, they took